Hi and welcome back. In this video, we're going to be getting a professional tool for API testing that's really awesome. This is called Postman, and you can get it at getpostman.com/apps. When you get to the website, you'll see something more or less like this. I see a main button here, which is download Postman for Mac, but I'm assuming that if you're on Windows, you'll see download Postman for Windows. So just download Postman for your appropriate platform, such as Windows, Linux, or Mac, and install it like any other normal application, and then we can run it. If you prefer, you can run Postman from within Chrome as an add-on. You can do that as well if that's what you like doing instead. Once you've downloaded it and run it, you will see something that looks like this. It'll be slightly different because I've already got some stuff here, but what you'll see is a window that looks more or less like this. So you'll have your runner, import, and a few buttons up here. You'll have a team library that will not be accessible, and also you'll have your stuff up here. You'll have to sign up to get here first, but that's sort of a given with any application these days. Then what I want you to do is create a new folder here. And I've called it REST API course, but you can call it whatever you want. So, your collection. Give it a nice name, it's usually better. Okay, and then in here, you can create folders. I created a folder called section 3, because this is the section we're in, and I would recommend you do that as well. It'll be very useful later on for you to have these collections to bring your memory back if you forget things. And then we're going to go over to the main sort of content. This API testing tool lets us make requests, and as you can see, the first button here is get. We can change that, and we can use any of the other available HTTP verbs. Get, post, but also put, patch, delete, copy, head, options, and many more. In this API, we've only used get and post. We will use others as the course progresses. Then we have to enter the request URL. So that's going to be http://127.0.0.1:5000/store. And once again, this is your local computer, this is the port that you're running on, and this is the endpoint we're accessing. Then you've got a blue button called send. I don't know why I said green there. A blue button called send. And when you press that, that will execute the request. Do make sure, however, to have your server running. So I'm going to make sure that it is running as the latest version. And then you can press send. And what you get back is your API content. So exactly as we would expect. Once that's done, you can also press save to remember this request. And normally I save my requests just as the endpoint name. And save it to the appropriate collection, and press save. Now you've got it here, and you can easily go back to it at any point. Now, what I would recommend you do now is to press the three buttons here, the three dots, and press duplicate. And then make sure to go into that endpoint. If you then go and change this one, and then you press save, it will be overwritten and you will lose the other endpoint. So just make sure to keep duplicating these endpoints as you go along. This endpoint we're going to call /store/my-wonderful-store, which, as you remember, is what we've got in our stores list as our first store. Okay, so let's press send. And as you can see, we get back the data that we would expect from this store. So that's really great. We can see that it is working. Once again, press save to make sure that this endpoint is saved, and then you can once again press the three buttons, the three dots, and press edit, and give this a nicer name such as /store/name. Then go ahead and duplicate that, go over to the new store, and for example we can access item, then we can send, and we can see that we get the items for this store back. Once again press save, edit this one, give it an appropriate name, and that's that. Now, we have created our 3 GET requests And these are not really the problem. These are just really accessing a URL and then we get some data back. Now, the more interesting bit is when it comes to creating. So let's duplicate the get store, go over to that endpoint, and change the get to post. Now, when we run this, we will get an error. And as you can see, this is an internal server error, because we have not sent it the data that it expects. We have to send it some JSON data. And using JavaScript, that's slightly more complicated and out with the scope of this course, but using Postman, it's really easy. Remember to save your endpoint first, change the name so it's more reasonable, and then let's go over to the headers. And a header of a request is the first thing that gets analyzed by the server. So the first thing that Flask is going to do when it receives a request is it's going to look at the headers to try and understand sort of what this request is. And in the headers, we can say things like what sort of data or what type of data we're sending. So this is a set of key value pairs, and the first header is going to be content type. And the value is going to be application/JSON. Now, when we send a request with this header, the server is going to be expecting JSON code to be in the body. So we're going to go to the body and we're going to select raw. Notice how because we've got the header, Postman automatically selects JSON from this drop-down list, but there are many other types of data that we can send. We're also going to look in the future at what form data and xwww.form URL encoded are, but don't worry about those for now. In the body, because we're creating a store, the only thing we need is the store name. So remember, JSON always uses double quotation marks, so that's name, another store. And this is all the data we need in our body. So let's save this and press send. And there you can see we get the new store returned, as you would expect. Let's go and look at our code, and the new store dictionary returns a new store with the new name and an empty items list. So we append that to the stores, and then we return the new store. And that's indeed what we've got here. Remember to save the request, then go to your get store, and when we press send, should we be expecting the new store to come out? Yes, we should. And indeed, we have here our stores list, and they have the first store and the second store. Now, let's go over to our last endpoint. Duplicate the get store name item, and I'm going to change it to a post. I'm going to save it, edit the name, and then we are once again going to do the same thing. So what's the first thing we have to do? That's right. Set the header to be content type application/JSON, and then the body to be raw. And here we're going to set the name of the item to be another item, comma, price, and this is going to be a decimal such as 10.99. Save and send. And we get an internal server error, so we've evidently done something wrong. So what to do now is go over to the terminal, look at the errors, and we've made a small error somewhere in the past. So this is the traceback. It's a lot longer than it used to be. And at the very bottom, we see the error name. Name error is that name request data is not defined. Directly above the error, we see the line of our code that went wrong. This is the file app.py line 51, and we see request data equal request.getJSON. Do you spot the error there? It's easy to make small typos while recording, but nevertheless it's going to be very useful. The problem is that equal is used for comparison, such as here, whereas a single equal is used for assignment. So that was the small error there. Make sure to restart your server and then run Postman again. And there we get our other item. Something to remember though, we've restarted the server, so when we get our list of stores, what do you think is going to come out? Our 2 stores or 1 store? And this is the problem. We're only going to get 1 store back, because whenever we restart the server, we lose the application's memory, and therefore the stores variable gets deleted. When we start the server again, the stores variable gets set to this list again, which only has 1 store. Obviously, the solution to that is to store things permanently in a database or in a file. And over the next few sections, we are going to look into how to store things into a database. That seems fairly useful for a REST API to be able to do. So we're going to look into SQL alchemy to easily and efficiently store our resources, such as our stores and our items, to a database. So this is Postman. Postman is extremely useful for testing APIs. Like, honestly, I cannot stress that enough. I use this thing every day at work, and I know most people do as well. It's because it just lets you have all your API endpoints here, and whenever you make a change to one of them, or whenever you want to verify that something works the way you expect, you just go in here and run the endpoint. And then you can check that the data returned is correct, that the thing is coming back, as opposed to giving you an error, and things like that. So it's really essential that whenever you're creating REST APIs, you keep all your endpoints here so you can test them as you go along. That's everything for this video. Hopefully you learned something about how software developers work professionally with REST APIs, and I'll see you in the very next one.